Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Heart of York podcast from St Nick's. This podcast series has been funded through a grant from Nominate UK. My name is Ellie Stead and I'm the CEO at St Nick's and the host of our podcast series, the Green Heart of York podcast. This session will provide some really interesting insight about being outdoors, different types of activities and how movement and mindfulness in nature can positively enhance your life. We'll be sharing lots of ideas today on how to connect to nature, the benefits of connecting to nature, and what we do to connect to nature on a daily basis. Have a think about them and see what you can do in your own way. It doesn't have to be big or dramatic, but notice how you feel beforehand, when you're focused on nature, and then how you feel afterwards. Pay particular attention to your thoughts. It's okay if they wander, but try and bring them back. Try to bring a sense of curiosity to what you're seeing and feeling. Notice how your body feels. And then try to keep some images from that in your mind and use it over the following week. Today's podcast is about being outdoors. It's about activity, movement, and mindfulness in nature and all the potential benefits that this can bring. I'm delighted to be joined by a plethora of outdoorsy, nature-connected people today on this podcast. I'm going to introduce them one by one. First of all, we have got Eleanor Tukey. Eleanor's an ecotherapy mentor at St Nick's. She uses nature to connect people and to improve well-being, but she's also an avid kayaker and wild camper. Hello, Eleanor.
Hi, nice to be here, thank you.
Next, we've got Andrew Garner, also known as Wolf, owner of Forest Quest, a bushcraft and forest school which provides a range of activities for children and adults. Thanks for coming.
Good to be here, thank you.
And finally, last but not least, we've got Mike Fletcher, co-owner of Poolbridge Farm near Weldrake in York, self-titled Assistant Sauna Boy, and we'll get more into that a little bit later.
Nice to be here.
So first of all, I'm going to ask each of you what type of activities you undertake, either in your professional or personal lives, and why you advocate for those particular activities as being great things to do and how to connect to nature. And I'm going to start with you, Mike.
Well, there's some pressure here, isn't there? What do I do to get outside? I work outside constantly. I'm very, very rarely inside. So as part of my role, we have some lakes. We have 4 lakes, the little nature reserve, or perhaps you might even call it a big nature reserve. We do wildlife photography. So my role is to make sure that people in and around the place are safe. Everybody's doing okay, and people come from far and wide to swim. So I spend a lot of my time convincing people to go for a swim, encouraging them, telling them it's not that cold. It is, I lie. And if they don't get in, I push them in. But yeah, it's all about being outside for me.
I've been. I know that there's no pushing in involved, but
There is.
In the summer months you do kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding.
We do all sorts. And we're opening another lake this year, so we're going to have even more space for people to come and just let kids be kids. So our family lake this year is going to be much, much bigger, and the joy that it brings me, it brings everybody, that when you hear kids laughing, messing around on dinghies, pushing each other in, and just being, it's not naughty, they're just being kids, and it's a lot of joy from that.
Fantastic. Andrew, I'm going to come to you next. Tell us a bit more about what you do and how your love of nature has progressed into a career.
Sure. So we provide bushcraft and forest school events. So we bring children and adults into the woods, and we run events for them. So we work with schools and we work with our own client base, essentially, groups of people who come along and just enjoy being outdoors with us. And all that is based around what I would call bushcraft skills and activities. So these are things where I've learnt some of the skills from experts around the country, and I'm passing those on to others. But what really underpins it all is being out in nature, just being outdoors, because just being outdoors is just fab for everybody. I love it. I enjoy being out there doing the job, but just getting that feedback from kids and adults from being outdoors is just so satisfying.
And we'll come back to that about how it makes people feel and the joy or the perception that you have of the people who come to your locations in and around York. Eleanor, how about you? What do you kind of advocate when it comes to nature connectedness, and what do you do to connect to nature?
So we have the ecotherapy program at St Nick's, and it's all about connecting to nature. Everything we do is about connecting to nature. So we have groups all week, and each group has a nature focus. So people come and they might be struggling a little bit with their mental health. They come and do one of the groups for a couple of hours, and in that time in the group, we'll focus on nature. It might be something specific. So say, for example, ladybirds or willow weaving. We'll get out on the nature reserve. We'll have a walk. And we're focusing on nature and not our mental health. And to see the difference it makes to people is fantastic, and to us, to get out on the nature reserve. So that's what we do on ecotherapy. But personally, I get out as much as I can, and it might be walking, it might be kayaking, it might be swimming, at Poolbridge Farm, but I get out as much as I can, camping, and it makes a big difference to me. I particularly Fridays and the weekends, I'm outdoors, and I relax. I enjoy what I can see, what I can hear, and I relax and I switch off.
And Andrew, what kind of benefits or what difference do you see in yourself and others when they're connected to nature?
So we spent quite a bit of time analysing this, really, because especially through our forest school, the concept of forest school is to monitor what difference it's making specifically to children. So we've become quite adept at watching what happens to people over fairly extended periods of time out in the outdoors, and just seeing how they change, how they adapt, how they develop, and how they progress mentally, I think. And I think it's all positive. I mean, it absolutely, definitely is positive. Everybody seems to just love being outdoors, even those who come to us somewhat cynical. Perhaps they're not that, what you might call outdoorsy. Well, they don't think they are. They get outdoors, spend some time, and fairly quickly they're going, okay, this is good. I can see where the benefits are. I suppose specifically what we find is that people fairly quickly establish a relationship with nature, and they start to appreciate what's around them and start learning, I'm going to call them techniques, to appreciate nature. And we try to help them and encourage that so that they can not just do it when they're with us, but at all times.
Mike, how about you? What sort of reaction do you get from the people that come to Poolbridge, particularly if they're coming for the first time, or they're a bit reticent or wary of what's involved in open water swimming?
I'll just stick with the first timers then, shall I? A surprising amount of nerves. And it's one of the things that's really taken me back from starting. We've only been going 2 years, and it's one of the real surprising things is how nervous people are. There's such a reticence to actually just get in and do it. People are scared of fish. People are scared of weeds. People are scared of insects. It's just amazing what twigs people are scared of. It's remarkable the blockers that people will put in there. And I say it's like a swimming pool, but okay, it's a bit colder and there's fish, but it's just get in and do it. And I think people have just got to take that first step. There's always going to be an excuse not to do something. The time isn't right. You're not feeling quite right. You haven't got your life quite in order. There's always a reason not to do something, and people have just got to do it. And whether that's going for a walk up a hill or doing some wild camping or whatever it may be, you've just got to do it. So when people do it, the reaction is generally overwhelming. The hit of dopamine that they're going to get, so they're flushed with these happy hormones. So straight away there's the sense of achievement, there's this as well, there's the bragging rights, you've actually done something, you haven't just stayed in and watched Coronation Street or whatever, you've actually gone out and done something. Or you go before you go to work, so you get to the office, how do you tell a wild swimmer, how do you one, they're wearing a dry robe, and two, they've already told you, because it's a really good thing. I think that's it, and I'm not saying that in a mockery, because it's such a positive thing that somebody's having these tiny little adventures for whatever reason. They might be trying to heal. They might be overcoming addictions. They might be doing this. Everybody swims for a different reason, but when you're swimming at sunrise and the kingfisher flies over you, and you do this before you've even got to work, you have every right to feel smug, and it is going to make you feel better for the day.
I have had that smug feeling. I think I've been the one and only swimmer in Monet first thing in the morning in the summer, and it was there was definitely a few bragging rights from that. So you've all talked actually about what nature connectedness and this activity and movement might mean for you as individuals or the individuals that come to your respective groups. How does it create a sense of community? What are the connections with other people who may also come along? What does that look like? Or how does that kind of, as you observe it, do you see people changing, connecting with other people as well as nature a little bit differently?
We do, very much. When people come to the Environment Centre, it's a big deal to come, and to come for the first time. I think, as you were saying, Mike, it takes a lot of courage to come, and it takes a little while to settle in, to come into the ecotherapy programme. But then people start to build a little bit of confidence and really connect within our community at St Nick's. So it's not just the ecotherapy programme. They become very invested in what else is going on at the Environment Centre, what the recyclers are doing, what the Green Corridors team are doing, what's happening with the pond. They really become invested, and you see people really start to shine, and that's what, part of the difference that it makes to people. You really see people grow.
And sometimes they transition into our other volunteering programmes as a result of that, don't they? So they join a different or another community within St Nick's as well.
Absolutely, and that's wonderful for us to see that. And I say the first coming to the Environment Centre for the first time and to come through the gate for the first time is hard. But then to see people really becoming part of our community and then wanting to go on and do more and more for the charity and volunteer and become involved, because we don't just do things on the nature reserve, we do things around York, and to see some of our ecotherapy participants then going to other sites around York is very rewarding for us and for them.
Andrew, how about you? You mentioned that on a weekend you might have anything up to sort of 50 children kind of coming along to do the bushcraft activities. What do you observe about kind of their interaction as a group and with each other while they're out in that sort of natural environment?
Sure. I mean, they have a shared experience. They're all enjoying the same space. They've all had a shared or common experience over a number of weeks, months, in our case, often years. So they've built up a relationship with other children for a start, which is really good. I think for me, what's really good about the outdoors is that individuals can choose better who they interact with. I notice this particularly with children from schools who I'm hearing from the teachers that one child isn't getting on with anybody else and there's issues going on in the playground, as you can imagine. They come to us and it's different because they've got much more space and they can interact with those children they want to interact with in the way they want to interact with them. So they can play a game with someone that they want to, because that's the nature of forest school. But they can avoid those children that, frankly, they don't get on with, which is fair enough. But even so, they've all then gone away with a shared experience. And what I'm then hearing from the staff at the school afterwards is that they're all talking about it. They're all relating to each other. And that builds up that sense of community and a shared event. And I think we also do corporate events. And you definitely get the feedback that they've had that shared experience, which they can all talk about, and builds teams. And it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. Mike, how about you at Pulborough? I know you've got a very active Facebook group with lots of people who
We're
actively...
more than just a Facebook group.
Well, obviously. But, people are very active about talking about the different activities and the communities and kind of what they do maybe after they've swum as well. So what's your perception of...
It's so much about the community. It really is. And that's something else that I don't think anybody envisaged. It doesn't matter. There's so many different backgrounds, so many different sizes, shapes. You name it. everybody's such this mishmash, this eclectic pot of people that forge these really strong friendships. And I don't know if it's the adversity of going into cold water, or it's that acts almost as a catalyst to form these really strong bonds. And people have become such close friends so quickly. And the friendship, I think, is part of the therapy. You know, you've got that green space therapy, you've got the cold water therapy, you've got the community therapy, you've just got that digital detox while you're there because you haven't got your phone with you. I think all these things combined, and people having that shared experience forges just the strongest of friendships in the shortest amount of time, and the wider community understand it. They get it because they do it, and it's hard to explain. You know, you've done it. You've gone in the morning. You felt smug afterwards, and you felt that exhilaration when you got in. Somebody else can understand that, but to somebody else that hasn't done that, it's really hard to explain. And I think that's why it forges the community as well.
One thing that we've been trying to do at St Nick's progressively over the last couple of years is improve aspects of accessibility, whether that's physical access to the site, whether it's our website, or whether it's just being far more mindful that the different lived experiences of people that have got different challenges. You know, we want to welcome everybody to our centre and to our nature reserve. But obviously, whether it's the weather or whether it's the nature of the site, that can present some challenges. So I'd just be interested to kind of understand your thoughts on how can we make nature as accessible as we possibly can, or what some of the challenges around that might be. And I'm going to come back to you, Mike,
okay.
if I can.
I think there's a number of things. I think gender is one of them. Wolf and I have never been intimidated by the opposite sex. You know, we've never had to plan our route, home at night time. You know, things like that we wouldn't normally think about, women have to do. So it's all right, we could go to a nature reserve and sit in a bird hide and wait until the bats come out with no worries whatsoever. But a woman on her own I would imagine, have issues doing that. So I think that, as an XLB, so having places that are safe, and we provide a safe space, but to have other safe spaces that women can go to without intimidation, I think would be a massive help. I think there's the physical accessibility of places. Again, speaking to Wolf earlier, we could go to the top of Scarfell, we can go Monroe bagging. We have so many different options for us to go out, whereas somebody that's perhaps in a wheelchair, they just simply don't, and you couldn't put a path up the Monroes. So what we've got to do is the places that are more accessible, that are lower, easier to do, we should make them absolutely accessible for people that can't go out, that have no choice. And I think the other one is people's economical position. If you don't have any spare income, disposable income, should I say, if you can't afford a car, you can't afford to transport, which is in so many people. You've got to sell a kidney to get a train ticket nowadays. Where are you going to go? If you're living in the middle of a city, you can't just go out to the Dales or the Lake District. You can't, because it's unaffordable. Having a car, fueling it. So I think there's so many ways that nature, although it's free to get, once you're there, but actually just getting there, I think there's so many challenges, and I think we could talk about these challenges for hours.
How about you, Andrew?
So, get connected with nature. It's outside. It's in your back garden. It's in the front. You don't have to spend any money or travel or do anything. You can go and look at nature immediately around wherever you are. It's not always easy, and I get that some people struggle just to get outside the front door, frankly. But, during lockdown, we couldn't go anywhere. We just wandered around the village, and it was absolutely amazing when you slow down and you start looking at what's around you. You suddenly realise that there's nature literally everywhere. And particularly in lockdown, when there weren't too many people around, you started seeing birds and animals that you wouldn't normally see. And that is connection with nature. It's just getting out there and seeing what nature is and understanding it and getting a relationship with it. So just go and see the flowers that are growing around the roadsides. That's connecting with nature. Anyone can, in theory, do that. So just get out there.
Eleanor, what's your perception of it from the Etherapy programme?
I think knowing that it is for everybody and you are welcome, regardless of who you are. So, for example, on the nature reserve, everybody is welcome. I think sometimes people don't necessarily think that place is for them, and it is. It really is. And I think also, as Wolf was just saying, bearing in mind that, you know, if you are at home and getting out is very difficult, there are lots of ways you still can connect to nature. You don't have to think that it's not for you. You can do nature journaling. You can grow something at home. You can sit by the window, look out. See what you can see. If you are able to get out, even just a short walk. It doesn't have to be in the countryside. It can be in the town or the city. There's still lots to see. Everywhere in the towns does have green spaces. Just finding those is important, and getting to those is important. But even, getting up early when nature's a little bit more accessible, more around, things are a little bit calmer, everybody can look to do that, Also at night, sitting and looking at the stars if you can. There's lots of different ways to connect to nature. And then using that throughout the week is important. So, if you can take a photograph of what you've seen, if you can write about what you've seen, you're still connecting to nature, and you can connect to nature, even if you're sat in the office then, you've got that photograph there for you to look back on. So just remembering that it is accessible, and it's accessible for everyone, but you just have to perhaps be a little bit creative as to how you do it.
Some great ideas there. And I know at St Nick's, obviously, we've got some GPS-triggered trails for people who come to the reserve, but to make sure that people who maybe are not able, for whatever reason, to get out there, all the video content for that is on our website under a Visit Us Virtually section. And there's some really, really good stuff there about mindfulness, about poetry, that actually, if you just want to take a pause and a moment, particularly midweek, particularly if life feels a little bit hectic or overwhelming, there are some really, really good elements in there to help you just think about nature or reconnect to nature in different ways. So I'm surrounded here by three people who've got massive, strong connections to nature. But what I want to now do is to cast your minds back, and I want you to think about how that connection to nature has changed from your younger self, earlier life, to where it is right now. What's that journey look like for you in terms of, was nature something that didn't interest you at all when you were young, or have you always had that connection and it's simply developed or strengthened as you've got a little bit older? And Andrew, I'm going to ask you first.
Gosh. Longest life experience, that's what it is. Yeah, so, I've always been interested. I started off as a scout, Cub Scout, and then joined the military, where outdoors quite a lot of the time. So yeah, I've always been outdoorsy. I've always been interested in the world around and what it's telling us and what we can learn from it. But then moved into running this my little company and setting it up, and really that sparked off, okay, I really want to get interested in this so that I can pass on anything that I learned to other people, because I realise the benefits I'm getting. How can I take that forward and learn and pass it on to other people? But I think that learning exercise for me really created an intense connection with nature for me, because you start really looking at what's around you and learning about it and being able to identify every species that you ever see. Not easy. And then doing things like, we set wildlife cameras up, and that's just taking it to a whole new level for me in terms of seeing what the badgers are doing, what the other animals are doing in the woods. And that builds up this real connection and understanding of what's happening around us in nature. And then the excitement bit for me, the really good bit, is then passing that on to other people, letting them see the films, talking to them about it, letting them see the badger set, and if possible, seeing a badger. Awesome.
Fabulous. Eleanor, I'm going to ask you next.
As a child, I played out, and I played out all day, every day when I could, when I wasn't at school. I grew up in the countryside, and I played and played and played, and I built dens, and I went off and walked and just played. And it's something I'm really passionate about, is children playing out and having that opportunity to play out and get muddy, explore, take risks, Sometimes you might fall out of a tree and things like that, but your problem solving develops a great deal from that, and your love of nature. So that's how I started to become connected to nature. And then I studied English literature first of all, and developed a love of poetry and nature poetry. And then I travelled quite a lot, and I was very fortunate to travel and teach overseas and experience amazing wildlife all over the world. And sometimes I would find myself looking around and thinking the people around aren't necessarily realising what they've got here, the beauty that's here. And then when I came back to the UK, I started to do a lot more walking, swimming and kayaking. And I've been in health and social care for quite some time now. And it's quite challenging often. It's quite hard. So for me then to go out and get in my boat for a day or for a few days, have no phone, no connection to what's going on in the media, I completely switch off. I'm very focused on what I'm doing, what I'm seeing. As anybody that paddles with me knows, I'm generally looking for dolphins and whales, and I spend hours looking for dolphins and whales. But because I'm doing that, I'm not thinking about anything else. And the same, I might go up to the moors and have a good wander, and I might get a little bit lost, and I quite like getting a little bit lost. Because I'm just absorbed in what I'm doing, and I'm not thinking about everything else that's happened all week. So that's very much where I am now. So I've always had a love of it, but now it's very much, I find that I really switch off and I relax. And it's something that I find when I see, we have a lot of professional meetings on site on the nature reserve. We have a lot of social workers come on site, community mental health team staff. And you see people come on site and you see people relax, when they make it onto the nature reserve. And I think particularly, we know that it's good for us. There's so much evidence out there that it's good for us. And particularly when you're busy and you're hard at work and perhaps a little bit stressed and, things are very challenging, making that time to get out and is more important. The busier you are, the more important it is to get out to switch off. So that's where I come from at the minute with it. It's a brilliant way to recharge my batteries before I come back on Monday, and I really switch off.
I might circle back round on that digital detox theme, because Mike, you mentioned that earlier, so bear that thought in mind. But Mike, what's your journey with nature been through your life so far?
I just want to know how often you see dolphins and whales, to be honest with you. I'm happy to give up on this one and tell me more about dolphins and whales.
I'll share footage with you. I do.
That is amazing.
I do, and I do off the Yorkshire coastline quite regularly. And, the people who paddle with me will say that the most amazing thing is how quiet I am for that time, because we've sat and watched them and they haven't realised. We've seen them about a mile off coming in, and we've just sat and rafted up and they haven't realised we've been there, and they've got to maybe a couple of metres away from us before they've realised, which is just a magical interaction experience.
We maybe need a whole new podcast of Eleanor's tips of where to go to spot the best wildlife.
I am so up for going doing that. What was the question? I switched off after dolphins. I was like, there's nothing more important than this.
Your relationship with nature and how that might have changed during the course of your life.
Yeah, I suppose I started off, I've always been outdoors. I was into birding as a little kid. I've always loved bird watching, and it's something I still do. I suppose you lose it as a little bit as an adult, that love of going outside, and it's fluctuated. COVID hit people. I was incredibly fortunate that I could go out and mess around on the farm. But after that, I got a role where I was staring at a screen for 8 hours of the day, and I don't know what language you're allowed to use here, but I went batshit crazy. I'm sure Joe can bleep that if it needs be. But it was really I don't think humans are designed for that. Yet, how many of the populace are? Their job is staring at screens, sending emails. That's people's jobs, and it just does you no good. So I think it's so essential to get out. And when I started, I'm really fortunate. I've been consulting for 17 years, and for the last 18 months, I've actually been able to work full time on the farm, and my head is completely different to what it was 2 years ago. My clarity of thoughts, everything is just so much better because I'm outdoors all the time now. I'm not staring at a screen, wondering about sending emails and deadlines and all that nonsense. So I think you touched on it earlier. And I think when you're out the busiest and when you're out the most stressful, that's when you need to take time. And there's a, just going for a wander through the woods or wherever, if you are fortunate enough to do that. Not everybody is. It's okay, if we live in a small village or a small town or in the countryside, but you might live in an inner city and you might have accessibility issues. So it's not obviously, an option for everybody, but the likes of the things what you're doing at St. Nick's, and giving access, where people don't have transport, I think that's why it is so essential. I think it's really important what you're doing.
Andrew, what's your thoughts on that kind of power of digital detox, especially if you're dealing with kids who we know are increasingly kind of tied to their phones all the time?
I think it's so important. Parents in particular recognise that, and they're keen to send them to us to get that detox, frankly. But the children themselves recognise, and we often end up having conversations about this with the children who are themselves saying, isn't this great? I haven't had any access to my phone, and actually I'm happy about that. It's almost like they feel some kind of peer pressure to be on their phones all the time. And the excuse, if that's the right phrase, to be outdoors means they don't have to do it, and they love it.
In terms of time of year, we've come out of a fairly wet early spring, and obviously we're just coming out of winter. The different things that each of you guys do obviously are quite different in the winter months or in a colder weather than they are in the summer months. I'm going to ask you first, Mike, how do you see sort of that difference, and is it possible to kind of do activities all year round?
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. Wear your big coat, you'll be okay. No, there is a difference. I sleep in my hammock a lot in summer. I don't do it as much anywhere near in winter. In fact, I haven't done it at all this winter because it doesn't seem to have stopped raining. And as much as I like being outdoors, sitting under a tree getting soaking wet, there's not an enormous amount of fun in that. So yeah, I think there is. But so I suppose it's choose your activities. Yeah, and you can do things. It's maybe I find it more pleasant in summer, but then again, on a nice, cold, starry night, getting a little campfire going and maybe a little glass of red while I do that. What a lovely thing to do. So I think it's just choosing one, or even practicing. Kayakers will go to a swimming pool, to practice the rolls and so on. Swimmers can go to a swimming pool, if they don't want that cold, and practice their swimming. You can go to a climbing wall to practice your climbing. So there's lots of things that you can do in readiness for when the flowers start coming and the days starting lengthening and so on. So yeah, don't hibernate. Prepare for spring if you're that way out.
How about you, Andrew?
So I'm going to disagree with you. Because actually, one of the kids on Saturday went to his mum afterwards and said, guess what? It was pouring with rain, and I sat under a tree, and it was great fun. Why? Because he was outdoors, and it's not the sort of thing he normally gets to do. I mean, what we did do is we explained to them and showed them which side of the tree to sit to stay driest. But nevertheless, they were sat there in the rain with it all going on around them, but still being able to watch the wildlife, and it was just fab. And they love it. No, it's almost to the point that parents pick them up and say, "Are you okay? It's been wet and cold." And they go, "Is it?" They didn't notice. And you don't notice. When you're outside doing things and you're correctly dressed, as you say, you just don't notice. You just get on with it. And it's just as good fun.
And Eleanor, our programmes all year round?
All year round, and probably even more important in winter than in summer. It's harder in winter. It's harder for a lot of people with mental health in winter. We've got shorter days, we've not got as much light, we've got worse weather. It's harder. So to get out in nature if you can, and to still see what's there. There is still wildlife there. There is still things to see and to experience. I have quite a sense of achievement if I've been out in, quite foul conditions, and, I kind of think, oh, great, get me. I've been out and I'm not sat in the office. I'm outside still, and I quite like the wind and the rain on my face. I quite enjoy the experience of feeling it. I feel quite alive when I have that. But it's more important in winter to connect and to connect to nature. And there's other ways of doing it. So you can be outside, but you can still do it inside as well. You can also do it with things like going and just collecting things to then put inside your house. So it might be some bark or some leaves, something to bring nature inside. You can still do it, but it's more important because winter's hard.
Yeah, and I suppose being together in a group as well, that community aspect in the winter, particularly, as you come up to the Christmas break, which is psychologically quite a challenging time for some people. It's, it's not all kind of joyous, across the board. But yeah, it's really interesting because it's been so wet recently. Certainly our reserve is relatively muddy in some areas. But I think it's time for us to bring this particular episode to a close. I just want to thank our fabulous guests for having come along and shared their insights and thoughts with us today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you want more information, there'll be more information on our website or on social media as this podcast is broadcast. But have a look at Pulbridge Farm, have a look at Forest Quest. They've both got websites that you can take a look at. And maybe go and give it a go. Go try something new. Go for an open water swim or go to an adult bushcraft session. I'm booked in a couple of weeks, Wolf, to come over. So I'm looking forward to trying something new, and I hope that it's given you a few ideas to go out and do something different too and connect with nature in whatever way works best for you. Thanks everyone for listening. Massive thank you to everybody that's listening, watching and reading this episode of the podcast, and a huge thank you to our great guests for another fantastic episode. For more information, be sure to check out our website at stnicks.org.uk and check out our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram and LinkedIn. Don't forget to check the socials and websites of all of our guest organisations too, where you'll find even more information that's been discussed on our podcast series. That's it for another episode of the Green Heart of York podcast from St Nick's. Thanks for watching, reading, listening. Do come back and see us next time for the next episode or take a look back at our previous episodes. And we hope you all keep the Green Heart of York beating out there.